All right, starting right on the dot here. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining our webinar today, Food for Thought. My name is Jenn Wang, and I'm the Director of Brand Strategy here at Cohley. We are a content generation and performance analytics platform helping brands grow their businesses, whether that's through branded visual assets, influencer partnerships, and product reviews. So we have some really great stuff to talk about for marketing strategies for food and beverage brands today. We are going to be spending some time with Hannah Robbins, CMO at Kate's Real Food, and Patrick Bernard, who is Director of E-commerce for Perky, Jerky, and Digital Strategist for Noka Organics and Bright Foods. So we'll have 10 or 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So all of you listening in, if you think of any questions at all during today's webinar, please do submit them at any time through Zoom, and we'll get to them at the end. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Hannah and Patrick to just give us a quick intro of themselves, starting with you, Hannah.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you. Can you all, hopefully you all can see me on video and hear me fine. Tech is always fun during these times. It's a pleasure to be here. We love working with Cohley. So when Jen asked if I would have a conversation, I said, of course, yes. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for Kate's Real Food, and my background is 25 years in consumer packaged goods, in marketing, innovation, new product development, advertising strategy. I've worked for small little companies like Kraft Foods and Sara Lee and Walgreens. Before Kate's, I was at Maple Hill Creamery for about 3.5 years, and I'm now here at Kate's, and thrilled to meet all of you here today.
And hello, my name is Patrick, coming at you from warm and sunny Montana today, where it's a balmy 23 outside. I've been in the natural product space effectively my entire career, been on the digital side specifically. Worked with brands like Evil, Boulder Brands, Packed Apparel, most recently Perky, Jerky. And in the past 6 months, I've kind of carved myself out into more of a consulting digital agency to help small brands grow from a foundational and performance side of things. So really a focus and emphasis in the food space specifically, and helping brands build out their direct-to-consumer strategy, e-commerce strategy, and really how do we make content fit into part of our whole entire communication component. So nice to be here today.
Thanks, guys. All right, let's start with Kate's Real Food. So Hannah, talk to us about your major marketing initiatives as CMO for 2020 and into the next year.
Sure. So for Kate's Real Food for this year and for really looking forward into 2021, which I know we're all extremely excited to move forward with 2021, is to grow Kate's Real Food from a small niche brand into a more mainstream brand, and to be in as many grocery stores and omni-channel as possible in 2021. We started as a small emerging brand out of Teton Valley with a mission to develop the best tasting, clean label energy bars on the market. And so we are excited to expand that mission into every household in America and every grocery store shelf.
Yeah, amazing. I think that's a common theme that we see with brands, where they might start with this niche market, and as they start to grow, they start thinking about how they can grow their audiences and appeal to the masses, but while still staying true to their founding roots. So you've definitely developed a robust influencer and UGC strategy during your time working with us at Cohley. So tell me how influencers and just leveraging UGC in general have played a role in your overarching goal as CMO to become this more mainstream energy bar option for Kate's Real Food.
Absolutely. So first of all, the partnership with Cohley started before I joined. So I get to be really excited and thank the team for bringing Cohley on board. And really what it's about is, I mean, listen, I've been in brand marketing for 25 years, and marketing has really evolved. And to stay relevant and to stay current, you've got to have you've got to have content that is relevant and is that speaks to and engages with your consumers. And one of the main things about Kate's is the foundation around living an outdoor active lifestyle and being an outdoor enthusiast and enjoying the outdoors and bringing that to your everyday life. And so having content that inspires consumers and gives both inspiration and aspiration to that concept is really what is critical for us in our partnership with Cohley. And being able to have that content engage with consumers, whether they live in a mountain town or they live in a suburban community or they live in a concrete jungle in a city, is to be able to have that inspiration, aspiration relationship with Kate's Real Food.
Yeah, I love how you're thinking of influencers as this dual purpose of generating impressions and targeting certain audiences, but also actually generating UGC and these branded assets for you to leverage in your marketing. At Cohley, we definitely have this firm belief that the ROI of an influencer partnership actually reaches much farther than that one-time social post. Because if you leverage the actual assets generated from that partnership, whether that's the hiker maybe that you see in these images here, or maybe the family and the everyday person, or maybe that on the left being in that urban jungle, when you leverage the actual assets generated from that partnership to test and improve your ad results and be able to target and personalize the content, you're getting that added benefit of incremental sales and traffic through improving results in your targeted ad channels versus just relying on the followers of the influencer to engage with your product. So I love that. And Hannah, your experience in marketing ranges from working at these large heritage brands like Kraft to smaller up-and-coming food and beverage brands. What we often encounter across the board, but especially with larger heritage brands, is that they're afraid to take the risk to deviate from their traditional brand guidelines and in-house creative. But I think there are a lot of brands out there that actually do recognize the value in connecting with customers on this more authentic level with UGC, but also grapple with this struggle of releasing a bit of that creative control because maybe historically they've only used that in-house produced professional content that has been that aspirational look for their brand. So what is your take on balancing the two?
I mean, listen, for heritage brands and even for new brands too, right? Or emerging brands, it is always a constant brand conversation around having authentic content that's created by a consumer or, or a brand fan, or things that are made in a photo studio. And really what's happened is that consumers and the American people have spoken for us, and they have said that we will only shop. I mean, the wallet and the conversation speaks for us, speaks to us, and that they will only buy brands and buy from brands where they can personally connect to the brand, and they feel that the brand is current and on trend. And showing, the perfect photo setting every time is like having a 5-star review every single time. It's not authentic. And so consumers have that expectation, whether you're a brand that's been around for 75 years or you're a brand that's been around for 10 years. And so to be relevant and to have, and candidly, I mean, it's also something that you see across the board as we look at our content. It's not necessarily saying that we can't do some art directing, because that's one of also the great things about working with Cohley is that we can have some specific things that we're looking for in the content. That we wanted to have a certain look and feel. We wanted to only be outdoors. We wanted to only have a city feel, or we wanted to have children that are part of the picture. But it's just being true to the brand, and it is also making sure that the brand speaks in a meaningful way and has a meaningful conversation with the consumer.
Yeah, right on. And from the Cohley standpoint too, I'd also challenge brands to actually test the content to see what's working before you're making assumptions of what's good or bad content. Because we do actually have a lot of client stories of brands who maybe got a grainy iPhone selfie from a content creator and just dismiss it as bad content that wasn't on brand and that didn't meet their aesthetic standards. But then when they actually tested it in social ads, it outperformed that perfectly curated professional content and actually drove higher click-through rates because one, it just seemed less like an ad, more organic, scrolling through a social feed. And two, it just better resonated with their customers because it was more relatable. But then maybe on the e-commerce website creative, the professional curated content performs better. So it's really just testing in all different ad channels with different types of content.
Absolutely. And the Cohley platform gives a brand a very easy way to do that. I mean, it's the Staples button where you press the Staples easy button, right? And that's really what Cohley is all about.
Love hearing you say that. Music to my ears. All right, so let's shift over to talk about retailer partnerships and expansion strategies, because I know that's something that is on a lot of food and beverage brands' priorities. I mean, we all know that it is incredibly competitive, especially in that food and beverage space. But at Kate's, you've managed to break into major retailers like Whole Foods, REI, and Walmart. So what is your take on how you split up your marketing efforts between retail versus your own D2C e-commerce?
Great question. And, if you had asked me this question a year ago or when I first joined the company, the percentage would be a lot different. But we've really turned it to be a majority of our marketing efforts are to support our key top retailers. Because if we don't drive velocities and turns on the shelf, and we don't have brand awareness with the shoppers at our key retailers, we're not going to be a brand, and we're not going to be successful. And so being able to create content that is specific to our major partners that can drive that engagement and drive a brand awareness is a key strategy for us moving forward, and will be a big strategy in 2021.
Got it. Well, so to show an actual example here of one of the things that Kate's Reel has done with Cohley to support your retailer partnerships is this Walmart influencer campaign that you ran. So within that campaign, you had influencers create this co-branded content in the stores with both the Kate's Reel and Walmart logo. And then the influencers posted on their own social channels about how much they loved your product and the ease of being able to pick it up in any Walmart. What was your ultimate goal that you wanted to achieve with this campaign?
So we actually created 3 new items for Walmart. We've got 3. It's 3 different flavors, and they're 4 packs. So it was creating awareness for the new items that are available at Walmart, and we are in just under 700 stores at Walmart. And we were discovered actually by a Walmart executive about a year and a half ago in Teton Valley, who discovered our bars and fell in love with them and decided that they were the perfect fit for Walmart stores. The goal here really is to drive sales. I mean, it doesn't get any more simple than that, right? And for those folks that live in a culture where, oh my God, we've got to stay true to all of our very tight brand guidelines, you can see here that we've got a variety of different looks, but all featuring our brand, our product, and Walmart, whether it's in the store, outside of the store, a bag, at the shelf, right? So there's a variety of different angles and looks and feels that you have of Walmart also interacting with our product and brand. So there are a few things in here that have been directed and asked of the content creator. And so that makes it, for us, on strategy, it makes it relevant and it makes it authentic and real because they don't all look the same, right? And so there were a lot of deliverables here. And this is also something that we're doing regionally to support, because we are not in all the Walmart stores. So this is something that allows us, and Cohley, you allow us to be able to create this content in a regional focus as well to maximize our ROI.
Yeah, that's a good point. With a lot of these store launches, they don't start with national reach, right? And it's a lot of like tests within regional focuses. So it's a great point to bring up that you can have these targeted audiences and targeted influencers in these key locations. But yeah, I think I also wanted to add that along with this foot traffic that you drove in store from these influencer posts, you did also generate this co-branded content that you can then repurpose in these ads and your own organic social to even further these retailer partnerships after the influencer activation. So I mean, with content syndication rights on Cohley, a lot of our clients even end up sharing these co-branded assets with the retailers themselves. And then the retailer will use it on their own marketing channels or their own social posts to promote that product or brand. So it can be this two-way street of co-promotion and co-branded content too. Love to hear that. Awesome. So unless you had anything else to add, Hannah, about Kate's Reel in general or just Walmart?
I don't at the moment, no.
Okay, thanks so much. I think there was just a lot of valuable information there from how you run things at Kate's Reel. And quick reminder for everyone listening in that you can just submit your questions via Zoom at any time throughout the webinar. And then in the last 10 or 15 minutes, we'll answer the questions that you submitted. All right, now shifting over to Patrick. I would love to pick your brain on your experiences running marketing strategies for your food and beverage clients and during your time at Perky Jerky. I worked directly with you on a lot of your Cohley campaigns, and you definitely have a very purposeful UGC strategy where you're leveraging content creators for UGC and not a social post at all. And in the creative briefs, you actively ask for camera phone content, not even allowing the creators to use their DSLR cameras, and requesting photos that haven't been super edited and look very raw form from this real person. So talk to me about where this UGC strategy and content direction even came from.
First off, I think we've worked together on all of the campaigns for the past several years. No, but it's just come from learnings and kind of this understanding and School of Hard Knocks and years of having done this, of this realization that so many small and emergent brands have these big ideas, these big campaigns. They want to go out and spend the money, but there's issues there. There's a lack of foundational element. There's a lack of content. There's so many different components that make everything work that you might not be ready for these large paid campaigns. You might not be ready to go out and accelerate your marketing, invest in performance marketing. You may not have the learnings as a small brand at this point to go out and put that heavy investment, that cash capital down. And what Cohley has allowed me to do is solve several different problems for multiple different brands, where I'd say first off, creating synergies, creating consistency across your channels, but involving user-generated content, having that unique look, that feel, that authenticity, and carrying that across your email marketing, your social marketing, your website, which I'll show some examples of here in a little bit. It's just so important, and it makes it look cool and fun. The other piece that's just been so profound for us has been the learning element, which you were referencing earlier when you were speaking with Hannah, regarding just testing content you may not think that's going to work, but it does. And you and I were speaking yesterday, and I said, 9 times out of 10, the content that I think is going to work, I'm wrong. And I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong. And it's always just fun because with this social environment, especially in a non-paid environment, we get the opportunity with Cohley where a single campaign, we've generated 200, 300 unique assets for the cost of product that allow us to go learn with our audience that's pre-existing. And that knowledge gives us a foundational understanding as to when we are ready to go invest dollars, we're not starting from nothing. It's so often that an agency will approach you and say, well, we need 3 months of learning. We need to understand what type of content is going to resonate with our audience. And you're going to be invested 3 months deep, 90 days of overhead plus ad spend before you have any learnings. Cohley just shortcuts all of that. It allows us to learn and see what's reacted to. And there's such a difference between what someone just likes versus what someone actually engages with. There's something to take from each one of those components.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, you've always talked about how having this fire hose of content is super important to a successful marketing strategy. And you just mentioned that again just now, but can you talk to why is the sheer amount of assets so important? What's the difference between running ads with a content library of 10 assets versus 200 or 500 or 1,000?
I think it's twofold, ads and from the organic side of things. First off, we're all strapped thin. We're all wearing too many hats. We're all working on too many things simultaneously. And we typically have, 1, maybe 2 people within the organization who are constantly watching, viewing, and engaging with your fans and posting content, whether it be in your emails or on your Instagram or on your Facebook, whatever that is. There's just a relief valve here where you've got, let's say you have 300 assets in your fingertips and you've got a rough concept as to what your core, let's call them social pillars, are within your organization, well, I can go through my library of content from a singular campaign and in a much shorter period of time without having to sit there and think and think and think about what's going to be the next day's post and what are we going to talk about today, because it's all relevant. We have to keep this out there. We have to keep posting. We have to stay top of mind. It's the world we live in today. It's a blow off there. And then the second component is just the ability to test multiple things against a similar audience to see what then does resonate. So you've got a plethora of content where, all right, I'm going to go against, we're talking to a food group here, right? The millennial mom with money. That's, I mean, what we've defined the audience as, basically. But it's not always clear what is going to resonate from your brand standpoint with her in particular. So with one of the photos up here in particular, that's the fireman holding the jerky. We never thought that post would do very well. And I just randomly said, we'll throw it up. Let's see what happens. And ended up being one of our most engaged with posts of all time. And to me, that's the 1 out of 10 that I would have said that's not good. I don't know why that's going to work. There's no way that's going to work. I guess I should have said 9 out of 10 because I'm usually wrong. But it starts to make sense, and there's so much character to it, and there's life to it. It's off-center. The dude's smiling. He's got a big mustache. Everyone loves firemen. I mean, it's just everything about it kind of makes sense after the fact, but you don't have that realization. When you receive this content from people, you're like, that's not going to work, but you try it, and it does, and you see results that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. And it sounds like based on our conversations, what has been really important is just this never ending testing strategy where even when you find learnings, you continue to test other variables. Like I think you had mentioned that what you found worked really well with these food and beverage brands were these nicely styled food photos that you can kind of see on the bottom here. And those were kind of like your top performers that you had realized performed best from a lot of your testing strategy. But then with this fireman photo, like even though you knew that well-styled food photos were top performers, you still continued to test, and you still surprised you with just somebody holding out the product in this photo, smiling, could actually perform really well. So I think you bring up a great point that it's just a relentless, never-ending testing strategy where you're never really done, and you need to continue to test different types of assets and creative to really get to what will perform with different audiences.
Yeah, and I think it's all really just conversion-based objectives. The conversion can be a click, that conversion can be an email collection, that conversion can be a booking, that conversion can be a purchase, whatever that may be. So I think it's just important to ground all of that. And like you had said, the fireman may have been one of our most engaged with. And we also had learned through a lot of testing through Cohley that people eating the product, putting the product in their mouths wasn't necessarily something that is appealing. There's this thought, I believe, because I've worked with lots of food brands where it's like, let's show people smiling and eating the product. And then you learn pretty quickly, like the photo on the top left, like it's kind of cutesy, but I don't really like watching other people eat. It's weird. I don't really like watching myself eat. So it's something we do and enjoy, but it's not a visual sensation there. It's much more of a taste sensation. So for us to learn and to start to create content through Cohley that was creating appetite appeal, I think became something that was extremely important for us, where we started to actually generate success from a conversion standpoint, where, and they're both important, engagement and conversion. I'll share some examples, like I said here on the site in a second. But creating taste appeal, that picture in the bottom left started to lead us to create and iterate on professional content, which you see, really beautifully styled meat and the ingredients around it, or beautifully styled bars and ingredients, whatever that may be, creating appetite appeal. It sounds obvious now at this point in time, but there's a progression to get there. And I've learned with several brands along the way, the hard way, through spending lots of dollars through advertising, that maybe we should have started here. And this, looking back on it and now applying this strategy to brands that I'm working with currently, it allows us to kind of short step that process to get you to a point where you're ready to say, hey, here's the performance content we want to use, and here's what we want to test because we know it works. With Perky in particular, that ended up being, let's show gorgeous meat photography and make people's mouths water when they're hungry.
Yeah, I love that. And that's definitely something we found together as you were running these content campaigns, because I think it is very intuitive for people to just take these photos of themselves or creators eating whatever product it is, but not, until you actually tested the content in your ads, you didn't realize that that was like a trigger that would actually make an ad perform less well than your others. And so what we did moving forward then is within all of your creative briefs moving forward, we actually actively said in the brief, like, do not take photos of putting the product in your mouth. So it's like a fun learning that you can then continue to iterate on, like the content that you continue to generate after you find the learnings from your tests. So yeah, I love that story.
I think you and I have put that in every brief since we started and learned that. So
yep, exactly. Yeah, so one thing that I want to touch on too, and I would love for you to just, I'll stop my screen share so you can bring up yours. But at Cohley, we help our brands generate both professional content and UGC. And both are very important. And similar to what I asked Hannah is a question for you, Patrick, on what's that balance of where there is a time and place for professional content versus UGC for you and the clients that you've worked with?
Sure, and I'll flip over my screen here in 1 second. I'll answer that a little bit first. Everything serves a purpose and everything needs to be intentional and thoughtful, I believe, and it all has to connect in some way. It doesn't have to be perfectly connected, but it all needs to be on brand and relatable. So to me, it's when I'm looking at product display pages, which are our conversion pages or our emails that we're sending to people from our welcome series, there's intentionality behind user-generated content and professional content in each of those components. Professional creates taste appeal. Professional creates a look of professionalism on your site. It's very intentional. You've thought about the photos. You've thought about the content that you're producing. UGC creates life and it creates character and it creates something that you can't necessarily replicate through a professional or a stylized photograph. Even in attempts to create professional UGC, it still looks professional. That's why we ask for people to shoot on an iPhone or ask for people to just go out and be themselves and be weird. I'll encourage people to just you do you. Even with some of the influencers we've worked with in the past, the user-generated content people, they've come back with photos and we've asked for iterations because it didn't match up with their feed. We picked you for a reason. We wanted you to add life, add creativity, add something different that we didn't do for our brand. We want to see all colors, all shapes, all sizes, different people utilizing it. We may say that we are, for the outdoor enthusiast or the go-getter, but that doesn't mean we're not just sitting in somebody's desk or we're not just in someone's car or in a lunchbox somewhere. And all of that's really important to understand and then be able to convey. So let me see if I can get this right and share the correct screen. Jen, did I do the right one?
I think so. I see it.
Excellent. Okay, so Bright is, my PDPs are, my new ones are about to launch. So these are a little bit FPO and you're seeing things a little early here. But you can see the difference here. I've got, my strategy is generally lead with the product, professional photography, but then create life. This came from a Cohley campaign. And it was just someone who was uber creative, playing with the product, playing with the ingredients and actually creating it's a heart up there. It cut off a little bit. I said these, there we go. They're a little FPO. Professional photography, creating that taste appeal. You understand it's chocolate, it's peanut butter. Oh, I want that. But then there's a use case and it's a little staged, a little cheesy, but you can understand what we're trying to get at with it. I'll show a few more from this site and I'll flip over to Perky, but taste appeal, yum, that looks good. Doesn't look like your traditional bar. Oh, peanut butter, awesome. But then use case, just sitting out there, enjoying it, looking like you're actually taking this somewhere where you'd use the product. Another use case, not my favorite photograph. My designer got super mad at me that I put this one on the website, so I might have to change it. But it does show a use case. I don't know if I'd have dry toast like that, but it's something. It's not just professional content. Professional, beautiful use case, yes. But then again, this one's great. Like I can see myself having my morning coffee, which I literally did this morning with my almond Bright Bar, sitting here enjoying the product. Okay, I get it. I get the use case. Smiles. Children always get clicks. Children and puppies, right? But smiles and enjoyment and people, just actually out there enjoying it. So it's this mix of content, this mix of professional with this user-generated that create authenticity. With Perky, we've got a lot of products on Perky. We have a lot of Cohley content, but again, same strategy. What's the product? Let's show the professional stylized meat photography that we know has worked from an ad standpoint. this was one of our well-performing ads that led into a zoom in spinning video. But then people just not living it. Where are you taking us? Show us where you took your Perky jerky. We've had campaigns where it's just where does Perky take you, basically?
I think that's actually word for word what we say in the campaign brief is show where you enjoy your Perky jerky in your own authentic personal experience.
And it's not the most beautiful photograph, but it's authentic and it's real. It's not what you lead with. It's not the first piece of content, but it's real. I'll say we've recently been, we just recently launched with Bright and have started to output content on here. But if we look back as to kind of where things were and to where they've gone, now we're still working on our strategy and exactly where we want to go, but that's what we were talking about, the testing, the learning, what are people reacting with? What's getting the most clicks? What's getting the most likes? What's generating the most engagement? So these are all pieces, metrics that we're tracking and watching within launching the Cohley content, but we've kept it on brand through the briefs that we've created, and it feels good to me. It just feels real. It doesn't feel overly produced. It feels like you could reach out to us and talk to us, and we'll have a conversation with you about what we've got out there. So, yeah, we've, I think all of the brands I've worked with have found that UGC has been an extraordinarily important component from testing, from learning, from accelerating ad growth, and just your foundational strategies, ensuring that you have everything you need to know going into a conversation when you start performance marketing, when you start high growth marketing from direct to consumer.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for sharing those. I think it's really brings it to life in terms of like how both UGC and professional content can really complement each other. Thank you so much, Patrick. So we are perfectly on time to spend the last 15 minutes just answering a couple of questions that came in. So I'll just kind of go down the list. Our first question here, I think both of you can answer, is how do you calculate ROI for your programs when it comes to like influencers or content, and kind of how that's evaluated?
I'd be happy to hop in on this one first. I'd say it totally depends on what your goal of the campaign is for me. So when I'm generating content like this for website, for social, for email, etc., I'm not concerned about an ROI objective. I'm concerned about a content objective. So my goal is to fill content where is needed to help ultimately keep the brand top of mind and sell product on the site. So it's a little bit tough for me personally in this instance. From an ad standpoint, if you're looking at it from a testing standpoint, when we move out of UGC, I move into professional content once we've learned what works. So I'm not necessarily concerned about the ROI. I'm concerned more about the personnel on staff who are having to post every day and not driving them crazy so they actually have content. And then also filling in that authenticity component. So that's speaking strictly from a non-ad standpoint. I think that Hannah would have quite a different response from more of the driving to retail and that kind of standpoint. But for me, it was not an ROI focus for these types of campaigns, specific, and that's intentional.
It's a great question, Jen, and Patrick. I respect your answer a lot. I mean, it is not a clear path, and different businesses evaluate ROI differently. So it depends on how much money you're spending as it relates to your overall marketing budget. It depends how much you've spent in terms of overall asset creation in general. It depends on how much money you've got that you are dedicated to a specific retailer. I mean, there are a lot of different factors that should go into a brand determining its ROI payback. Some brands look at direct sales. Some brands look at, web traffic. So it just depends on, to what Patrick's saying, it really depends on the goals of the particular campaign and the brand. But I guess looking at UGC overall is a factor of what is the value of having creative content that is accessible and that there's a lot of, there's a volume of it. So that has a particular value to it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And just from working with a lot of our clients too at Cohley, I think you're exactly right, Hannah, is that ROI means something different for every brand. But I think when it comes to actually content and influencers, there's just a lot of factors that go into it. Like there's definitely like reach and lift in traffic and sales that can come from an influencer partnership, but there's also lift in ad results when you compare the performance of your ads before versus after, when you've done testing with more UGC. It could be cost saved from generating UGC on a platform like Cohley versus an expensive in-house photo shoot. So there's a lot of elements that kind of play into how you calculate that ROI, and it just depends on what you're valuing and what you're kind of focused on. Okay, so we have another question here about budgets and knowing how much to spend on influencer campaigns. So I can kind of jump in just to weigh in on what we recommend to our clients in terms of influencer and content spend, and then you guys can maybe fill in on what you guys do. But overall, it depends on a couple of things. With a lot of campaigns that Patrick has run, actually, it's been for UGC for product exchange only, where because the goal of the campaign is just to get UGC assets in an authentic environment versus like professional created content. A lot of those campaigns have just started with product exchange only. And then if you're asking for something higher tier, maybe semi-professional, that's when you would compensate a flat rate for the content. And when it comes to influencers and actually posting on their channels, we always recommend a tiered compensation rate based on follower or engagement, because influencers that are going to get you a higher reach and impressions are going to definitely ask for more compensation. But maybe Patrick, just because I know that you've had experience both running like paid and unpaid campaigns for influencers, what is your take on, how you compensate the content creators?
So to not answer the question, totally depends on your objective. And then to compensate, people are willing to do, these influencers are on here for a reason, because you have reach with your brand and your brand has credibility and they have reach. So there's a partnership there. So I'd say compensation it doesn't necessarily have to be, you're not talking thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. You're talking dozens or hundreds of dollars to make a lasting relationship. And I'd say, continuing those relationships can be really awesome as well, where you have someone who's interested in your brand. So I'd say that pure product comp is one of my favorite introductory means to start working with people, because you see who does an awesome job for you, and then you see who also produces great content and wants to work with you in the future. There's influencers who will come back to us and they'll submit the bare minimum and it at least adheres to the brief, but there's some who way overperform because they love it and they want to keep working with you. And those are the types of people who I personally want to invest in. And that comp structure is just, it's so hard to say, here's your budget, because if that person has 10,000 followers or 2 million followers, there's a huge gap in what that person's comp would be. But I mean, a $50 gift card can go a long way. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I think ultimately it comes to what your goal is of the campaign, whether it's reach with large influencers or just content itself. And there are also different factors that weigh in, where it's not an exact formula where we can say, if you want this much reach, you should compensate this much, because it also depends on your value of the product that you're gifting. It depends on the brand affinity you have and how excited creators are to promote the products. There's a lot of different factors where it's tough to just give a formula of one-to-one of like, if you want X, then you have to compensate Y. But what we do is we have dedicated customer success managers that sit down with our clients to kind of go through recommended compensation structures based on the value of your product, what the output is, and what your KPIs are for the campaign. So I hope that kind of helps answer that question. Okay, so there's another participant that also asked about your businesses and how you go about prioritizing an investment like Cohley when there are so many other things to think about, like retail partnerships, brand awareness, launching on e-commerce for the first time. I think it's mostly about like what made you prioritize Cohley as an investment as part of your budget, marketing budget?
Do you want me to go first on that one?
Sure. Go ahead, Patrick.
When setting up and getting started, content is so important to have a plethora of it so that you're not thinking about it at a later date, because there are these other things that are so important, especially for a brand owner, a CEO, the heads of company. You don't want to be thinking about content. You don't want your person to have to be coming to you, and the person who's running your social to be coming to you and asking, where can we get this content? How can we create this content? You're creating a library or repository of something that you don't have to think about later. And the cost of a professional photo shoot is far greater than what we can do within Cohley in a relatively short period of time. You're also creating variety, variability, and testing factors. So to me, it's one of the first core foundational elements of setting things up and getting things going is having the content and preparing the content. Even with young and emergent brands, we can have an idea as to what the brand is going to be and who we're going to resonate with and where we're going to talk. But like I said, through testing, we're going to learn that. Through Cohley, we're going to get that content. We're going to find that. And we're going to have all this content that we didn't know we needed, whether it be on a sell sheet or your website or an email at some point in time for some campaign you didn't know you were going to do. You don't have to go think about it. It's all there. So to me, it just takes it's a blow off for that person. It's for the person in charge of running social, for the person in charge of doing emails, creating marketing communication, where you're allowing that person to be thoughtful and creative instead of being stuck and thinking every day about what am I going to have to do for the next day's content.
I totally agree with you, Patrick. I would say holistically that creating this, having this content is an integral part of your holistic marketing plan. So, I mean, which is basically what Patrick is saying, but it can be used across, it should be used across every platform or every silo within marketing. I think what you do need to do earlier or sooner rather than later is figure out what type of content resonates best with your core audience, and not necessarily the current core audience that you have, but the audience that's going to grow and drive revenue, that is the lowest hanging fruit and represents the largest revenue opportunity for the brand. So that you should do sooner rather than later. And then once you understand what that kind of content is and what that looks like, that's what you use then as your holistic as content for marketing. And it's, you know, it goes beyond, I mean, it's, you know, as Patrick said, it's a sell sheet, it's an email, it is a presentation for a retail buyer. Maybe it's signage, maybe it's a shipper header, maybe it's packaging, maybe it's a corrugated, maybe it's a letter that goes in the sample boxes to new consumers. I mean, there's, you know, 75 different ways that you can use the content, but I would first understand what it is that you need.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, this next question here, how do you get comfortable testing the content you think won't do well if it's too much of a departure from your brand identity? Isn't that cohesive brand perception super important?
Absolutely, but you've got to test, and you can do it in a small group of people that isn't going to negatively impact your brand. But you absolutely need to test it. And you should test it using an audience that represents, as I just mentioned, that represents your largest source of revenue for growth. Because if you're using the creative that's going to resonate with your sort of heritage, your foundational brand enthusiasts, is not necessarily the creative that's going to resonate as you continue to grow and scale, or you change your brand positioning. And I've been down that path. It's a painful path. And it's very nuanced. And as Patrick said before, you know, testing people, watching people eat something. People don't want to see anybody eat. You know, they don't. They want to see themselves eat. But people do love kids. They love dogs. I mean, when I was in the dairy category, you know, there's 30 different ways you can communicate dairy: farming, animals, cows, farmers, grass. And so we had to figure out what resonates best. But you absolutely will not. The question is, will you harm your brand by testing creative that may not resonate? And the answer is, do it small, do it in a way that gives you quantifiable data that you can then use to move forward.
Yeah, I think data says that roughly 4% of your audience is going to see any given post. So just keep that in mind when posting, unless you're going to put money behind it. So we typically look at it as an 80-20 or 90-10 rule, where if we have 20 posts in a month, 5 of them are going to make the founder real uncomfortable. And those 5 might often perform very, very well. And he'll say, or she'll say, yeah, that one actually might have worked really well. We'll try that again sometime. Always have down the middle content, of course, things we know are going to work that we've seen work in the past, product photos, ideas, ingredients, things like that. But you gotta push, you gotta try, you gotta test, and just have it laid out in the plan. 20%, it's not paid. We're just putting it out to our organic audience. I think Hannah made a really good point that your audience now is not your audience in 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 2 years from now. All of a sudden you have 200,000 followers and you're talking to a macro audience. We learned very quickly on the Perky side that our core audience that we thought was the snowboard enthusiasts, the outdoor go-getters, turns out we're talking to a 65-year-old woman in Iowa who just couldn't buy the jerky at her Walmart anymore and wanted to get it. So it's like she's buying it online and we're talking to her on Instagram at this point because that's where we are today.
That's exactly right.
Awesome. All right. I think we have time for just one more question here. How do you use content syndication to share with retailer partners? I can share what we do at Cohley for this one. So the way that it works with getting asset rights on Cohley is with all of the influencer partnerships, even if it's more of a social focused campaign, you get the rights to all of the assets in perpetuity to leverage within your marketing channels. When it comes to content syndication and sharing those rights with retailer partners, it's an extra add-on that we make sure is included in the terms and conditions for the creators, that when they are creating the content for you, they're also releasing the rights to third parties externally from your organization or your company or brand. And so in that case, you then secure the rights to those assets to share with retailer partners, in which case like a Target or a Walmart would be able to also have the rights to those assets to share and on their own marketing channels. So that's the way that content syndication works in terms of like the assets that you would generate on Cohley. All right, so we are, oh, sorry, go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. If you get to that point and you have a major retailer that wants to syndicate your content, that is a phenomenal problem or challenge to have. So go get them.
Love that. Yes. I mean, honestly, it's so exciting for us when we see major retailers posting content from our brands on Cohley. So
go get them. It's fantastic.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Special thanks to Hannah and Patrick. It was so valuable having both of you and your perspectives on the webinar today. So thank you so much. And for everyone listening in, feel free to connect with any of the three of us on LinkedIn if you have any follow-up questions. I know we didn't get to all of your questions that you sent through the webinar. So feel free to reach out to any of the three of us if you have any follow-ups. We'd be happy to connect with you.
Cheers all. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a great afternoon.